Every single time January rolls around, we see the big ammunition manufacturers drop another hyper-velocity, bottlenecked wonder cartridge. They print slick magazine ads claiming the old workhorses belong in a museum. Well, I got tired of the smoke and mirrors, so I sat down at the reloading bench, crunched the raw ballistic data, and checked actual harvest statistics from real hunting camps. And what I found might hurt some feelings. The 3006 Springfield is over a century old, yet it still decisively outclasses the vast majority of these modern, computer-designed miracle rounds. Smart woodsmen out there in 2026, they are not gambling their hard-drawn tags on an unproven trend. They are carrying the undisputed benchmark. Before we dive into the hard numbers on the range today, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell. It keeps the algorithm happy and lets me keep bringing this unapologetic, trigger-pulling content straight to your screens. Let us get down to business. The caliber that refuses to die. I have spent enough time behind glass to see these fad calibers come and go. The 6.5 Creedmoor stormed the gates and guys were trading in their entire arsenals. Now the 7mm PRC is the darling of the long-range crowd and the hype machine shifted gears overnight. That is a cute trend. But the reality is the 3006 is still dropping bucks, bulls, and bears exactly like it did way back in 1906. This cartridge earned its stripes in the trenches as our primary service round. Then it spent the next 100+ years dominating the North American game fields. Whitetail, mule deer, heavy timber elk, Alaskan moose, and mean black bears. It has put them all in the dirt. You do not build a legacy like that in a corporate boardroom. You build it by delivering devastating kinetic energy to massive animals through brutal blizzards and driving rain. From a frozen ladder stand in the Appalachian timber to a lung-busting alpine basin out in the Rockies. I trust my life and my hunts to it for a simple reason. When you run standard factory ammunition, pushing 150 to 180 grain projectiles, you are looking at muzzle velocities squarely between 2,700 and 2,900 feet per second. That equates to a sledgehammer blow of roughly 2,900 foot-pounds of energy right out of the barrel. What does that mean when you are staring through the scope? It gives you a fiercely flat trajectory for standard hunting distances. It carries the necessary horsepower to punch through thick hides and heavy bone, and it performs with absolute consistency whether you run a basic cup and core, a premium bonded, or a solid copper pill. Professional outfitters demand consistency. Guys who save up for 5 years to draw a premium tag demand consistency. The 3006 hands you that reliability on a silver platter, and it does it without forcing you to hunt down ridiculously priced boutique ammunition or proprietary rifle parts. The practical layer, logistics over hype. We need to talk about the tactical logistics of hunting, which is something the forum commandos usually ignore. Firearms and ammunition in this chambering are literally ubiquitous. You can walk into a massive sporting goods warehouse or a dusty middle-of-nowhere bait shop, and you will consistently find 3006 boxes resting comfortably next to the 308 and the 270. Meanwhile, the shelf space for those brand new fancy magnums is completely barren. That is a massive tactical advantage. When you are a day away from the season opener, you cannot afford to be checking shipping updates on a back-ordered case of ammo. Do not get me wrong, I am not calling the new engineering garbage. I am telling you that the 3006 remains the gold standard because it simply works. It is universally available and it has a century of blood on the ground to prove it. That undeniable trifecta crushes the marketing trends every single time. Ballistics do not lie. The hard math, let us look at the actual physics because math does not care about feelings. When I am setting up a rig for the fall, I look at the hard numbers. Take a standard 3006 cartridge, loaded with a 165 grain soft point. Out of a standard 22 or 24-inch hunting barrel, it is going to clock right around 2,800 feet per second. Step up to a 180 grain payload, and you are cruising near 2,700. That translates to a devastating 2,800 to 3,000 foot-pounds of terminal energy at the muzzle. When you tell a seasoned elk guide you are running those numbers, they stop worrying about your rifle. If you zero that 165 grain load perfectly at 200 yards, you will see roughly 7 to 8 inches of drop when you stretch out to 300. Take it out to a full 500 yards, and you are looking at a drop of 45 to 50 inches. Now, let us factor in the environment. With a full value 10-mile-per-hour crosswind at that 500-yard marker, you can expect about 20 to 24 inches of wind deflection, depending on how slick your bullet is. That is a completely predictable, manageable ballistic arc, and mastering a predictable arc is exactly what fills freezers, period. The rivalry. Stacking up the competition, I want to put this head-to-head against the modern favorites, just to show you I am not playing favorites. Let us look at the 308 Winchester. Pushing a 165 grain bullet, the 308 will hit about 2,650 to 2,700 feet per second. It is a great round with a similar trajectory, but it bleeds off significantly more kinetic energy than the 3006 once you push past that 300-yard line. Then we have the 6.5 Creedmoor. Running a standard 140 grain projectile, it sits right around 2,650 to 2,700 feet per second from a typical hunting rifle. Sure, the superior ballistic coefficients mean it slices through the wind a bit better. But the sheer foot-pounds delivered to a heavy shoulder blade are drastically lower when you compare it at those same distances. And what about the new kid on the block, the 7mm PRC? It launches a sleek 175-grain bullet at a blistering 3,000 feet per second. It absolutely shoots flatter, and it definitely bucks the wind like a laser. But you pay a steep price in significantly harsher recoil, eye-watering ammunition costs, and abysmal shelf availability. Versatility is the real flex. The true superpower of the 30-06 is its Goldilocks positioning. It brings enough velocity and sheer mass to smash through quartering angles on massive elk and stubborn moose. But it does not punish your shoulder like the fire-breathing super magnums. And let me tell you, managing your recoil impulse is absolutely critical when buck fever hits and your heart is beating out of your chest. If you are shouldering an 8-pound hunting setup, the recoil energy of a 30-06 firing a 165-grain pill sits comfortably at 18 to 20 foot-pounds. The 308 hovers around 16 to 17. The 6.5 Creedmoor is incredibly mild at 13 to 15. But that 7mm PRC, it jumps way up into the low to mid-20s. Slap a high-quality, modern recoil pad on a properly fitted stock, and the 30-06 remains an incredibly pleasant, shootable platform. I always keep one in my working safe because it is essentially a ballistic Swiss Army knife. Are you stalking speed goats or thin-skinned whitetails? Load up a fast 150 or 165-grain soft point. I am talking about classics like the Remington Core-Locked, the Winchester PowerPoint, or the Federal Fusion. They exit the barrel screaming between 2,750 and 2,900 feet per second. They will absolutely vaporize the vitals on a broadside shot, without turning the opposite shoulder into bloodshot jelly. Heavy hitting and high-tech, but what if you need to break heavy bone on a less-than-ideal angle? You simply swap out to a rugged, structurally reinforced projectile. Grab the Federal Trophy bonded tip, the Nosler AccuBond, or the solid copper Barnes TTSX. Those bullets are engineered to retain their mass and drive deep, even when they smash through a scapula. That structural integrity is what turns a marginal shot opportunity into a successful pack-out. When I head up into serious bear or moose territory, the cartridge just shrugs and scales up to the task. A heavy 180-grain Nosler partition, or a premium 178 to 180-grain bonded or monolithic copper round. They boast a sectional density right around .271. And their ballistic coefficients generally hover in the .45 to .55 range, depending on the specific geometry. That combination guarantees devastating energy transfer way out past 300 yards, and it ensures true, straight-line tracking through massive muscle groups and dense bone structures. If I know I am facing a giant coastal brown bear, and I need catastrophic penetration, factory loads in the 200 and even 220-grain category are readily available from powerhouses like Nosler and Federal. Those heavy hitters bump your sectional density up to an unstoppable .301. And because almost every factory 30-06 barrel is cut with a 1 in 10 twist rate, they stabilize those massive flying anvils with absolute precision. Modern compatibility, this old warhorse has not stagnated either. It fully embraces modern projectile technology. Solid copper options like the Barnes TTSX or the Hornady CX are perfect for hunters navigating strict lead-free jurisdictions, and they still blossom beautifully at the terminal velocities the 30-06 generates. If you lean toward the precision shooting world, projectiles like the Hornady ELDX or the Nosler AccuBond Long Range offer incredibly slippery, drag-resistant profiles. They cheat the wind and flatten the curve, giving you Magnum-like trajectories without the Magnum penalties. You can lock in a 200-yard zero with a 165-grain load for your local deer woods, and simply use a basic holdover for a 300-yard shot. Then, switch over to a robust 180-grain bonded bullet for your out-of-state elk hunt, and you will find your optic adjustments are surprisingly minimal. If you think tactically about your gear, that kind of modularity is a massive win. Ammo you can actually find. This is where the 30-06 absolutely dominates real-world hunting scenarios. Remember the great ammo droughts after 2020? I could still walk into massive sporting outlets, or tiny rural gas stations, and find tall stacks of 30-06 ammunition sitting proud, right alongside the 308 and the 270. Meanwhile, the guys running the newest, hottest calibers were crying on the internet about back orders. Every major ammunition manufacturer pumps out a massive variety of 30-06 stock-keeping units, because the customer base is unfathomably large. You are going to trip over traditional soft points all day long. Remington Core-Locked in 150 and 180, Federal PowerShock in 150 and 180. Winchester Super X in 150 and 180, and the ultra-reliable Hornady American Whitetail in 150. Need something that holds together better for a quartering to shot? You can easily source the Federal Fusion in 165, the legendary Nosler Partition in 180, the Barnes VRTX firing a 168 or 180-grain TTSX, or the incredibly accurate Hornady Precision Hunter topped with a 178-grain ELDX. Road trip reliability, but finding boxes on a shelf is only part of the tactical equation. Logistics are just vastly superior when your chambering is a global standard. If I accidentally leave my ammo bag on the kitchen counter before a cross-country trip, I can pull into the nearest hardware store off Interstate 95, buy a replacement box, and keep my original dough pea largely intact. If I am hunting with a buddy and his particular barrel suddenly starts throwing wild groups with his chosen load, We can swap brands within the same weight class and still maintain highly practical accuracy for the field. When a freak storm is closing in and you only have a 3-day season to notch your tag, that level of flexibility is worth its weight in gold. And if you run a reloading press, you are in absolute heaven. Premium brass is littered everywhere, manufactured by Federal, Winchester, Nosler, and Norma. High-quality sizing dies are perpetually in stock from RCBS, Hornady, Redding, and Lee. Your projectile selection is insanely vast, ranging from a lightning-fast 125 grains all the way to a bone-crushing 220 grains. You can hand-load a powder puff 150-grain round for a recoil-sensitive shooter, or a heavy-driving 200-grain thumper for deep timber elk, and you never have to wrestle with twist rate limitations or cramped magazine lengths. Feeding and extraction. The mechanical advantage. Let us talk mechanics, because feeding and extraction are where the 3006 acts like a consummate professional. Look at the brass itself. The case features a brilliantly generous taper and a very moderate overall length. That specific geometry allows the cartridges to glide up the feed ramp effortlessly. And more importantly, it allows the spent brass to break free and extract cleanly from the chamber, even when your action is packed with freezing rain or fine desert dust. That inherent reliability is exactly why so many legendary bolt-action rifles shine in this chambering. I am talking about the iconic older Remington 700s and the pre-64 Winchester Model 70s, right alongside the modern workhorses like the Tickus, the Ruger Americans, and the Savages. And if you are a semi-auto guy, the classic Browning BAR has been churning through 3006 shells flawlessly in muddy deer camps for generations. Sub-zero mornings, neglected magazines, or a handful of pine needles sitting in the receiver. The tapered geometry of this cartridge just powers through the grit. Finally, shootability is the ultimate deciding factor when you pull the trigger on a live animal. This round perfectly balances the weight of the rifle, the recoil impulse against your shoulder, and the sheer kinetic devastation downrange. It allows you to stay in the glass, spot your own impact, and rack the bolt for an immediate follow-up shot if the situation demands it. Because modern bonded and solid copper projectiles expand with utter reliability at the velocities this cartridge produces, your terminal performance remains brutally consistent from point-blank tree stand encounters, all the way out to practical cross-canyon distances out west. I guarantee your shot groups will shrink significantly when you are running a rifle that does not induce a flinching habit. The king isn't going anywhere, so, after burning out barrels, running the ballistic calculators, and putting boots on the ground, this is my definitive verdict. The 3006 has been keeping American families fed since 1906, and it firmly retains its crown as the absolute benchmark in the hunting world, with a bullet selection spanning from a nimble 125 grains to a monstrous 220 grains. I can seamlessly transition the exact same rifle from speed goats to whitetails to elk, moose, and heavily muscled black bear. A 165-grain bullet clocks in right at 2,800 feet per second. A 180-grain payload rides close to 2,700. And you are constantly commanding a staggering 2,800 to 3,000 foot-pounds of energy the moment it clears the muzzle, with a sectional density on the 180-grain pills sitting at a healthy .271. And the heavy 200-plus class reaching into the .30 range for absolute straight-line devastation. It is no wonder the most experienced wilderness guides just nod in approval when you uncase a 3006. It hits like a freight train across all practical hunting ranges, and it defeats terrible shot angles when you pair it with premium bullet construction. Ultimately, it is the raw, tactical practicality that cements its legacy. Top-tier factory ammunition is heavily stocked everywhere, offering both traditional lead cores and monolithic copper options. So, hunting in heavily regulated, lead-restricted zones is completely effortless. For the guys rolling their own ammo, the brass, the dies, and the projectiles are perpetually lining the shelves. And the platforms themselves range from incredibly rugged budget options like the Ruger American and the Savage Axis, up to the meticulously crafted Tickus, the timeless Winchester Model 70, and the legendary Remington 700s. They all cycle like butter because the fundamental case dimensions are engineered to conquer the cold and the dirt. So here is my final piece of advice for you. If you are gearing up for the 2026 season, and you already have a 3006 sitting in the safe, do not you dare sell it. Take it to the range, verify your dope, and select a projectile that matches the specific tag in your pocket. If you are a new shooter looking for your first serious big game rig, skip the hype. Pick up a reliable, well-built bolt gun in this caliber. Start feeding it a quality 165 or 180 grain load, and invest your time in learning how to read the wind. The flavor of the month cartridges will always come and go, burning out barrels and emptying wallets along the way. But this American icon continues to punch tags because it is ruthlessly accurate, universally available, and utterly devastating right where it counts. If you appreciated this deep dive and got some real tactical value out of it today, do me a favor and smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment down below letting me know your absolute favorite 3006 load. Stay safe, train hard, and I will see you downrange.